Director David Fincher and screenwriter Gillian Flynn bookend their 2014 film Gone Girl with a shot of Amy Dunn while her husband Nick voices over.
The primal questions of any marriage. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What have we done to each other?
They spend the 2.5 hours between these scenes responding to that final question by exploring why American marriages seem so unhappy. Outwardly, Gone Girl suggests natural gendered flaws and differences result in marriages that can't possibly be happy. The first half of the film focuses on Nick's shortcomings as a husband, specifically that he's angry and a cheater. The film roots both of these flaws in his relationship with his father. First, anger. After Nick spends the day with the police in the hours after Amy goes missing, he finds his dementia-addled dad in the station. This is the first time we see Nick lose his temper. As his anger grows, Fincher shifts the camera angle so he and his dad get closer together in the frame. Then, when Nick's calm demeanor returns, Fincher cuts to him in close-up with his dad out of frame. Dialogue between Nick and his sister Go not only reinforces this.
Well, when you're upset, you bottle up. You can seem angry.
Please don't say like that.
But also shows that Nick's cheating on Amy is also a behavior he learned from his father.
You're a liar and a cheat. You're just like Dad.
Anger and cheating are stereotypical masculine flaws, and it's no accident Fincher roots them in Nick's relationship with his father. It's to suggest Nick inherited these flaws as if they were genes. To drive this home, Fincher makes it clear that Nick hates that he inherited these flaws,
Please don't say like that.
but is powerless to change them. This is also the case for Amy. The first half of the film only shows Amy in flashbacks through her diary, where she depicts herself as the opposite of
someone I don't want to be. The nagging shrew, the controlling bitch. I'm not that person.
But when it's revealed Amy faked her own disappearance and her false narrative fades away, we see she's the epitome of the archetypical controlling wife.
But I made him smarter, sharper. I inspired him to rise to my level. I forged the man of my dreams.
The extent to which Amy controls Nick is, of course, learned from her parents. Early on, we see Amy's rich parents made their money selling a fictionalized version of Amy's own life as a series of children's books.
When I was 10, I quit cello. In the next book, Amazing Amy became a prodigy.
You play volleyball?
I got cut freshman year. She made varsity.
Once again, Amy's gendered flaw, that she's too controlling, comes from her parents. This also explains why Amy treats her fantasy relationship like a spectacle to be displayed to others.
We were the happiest couple we knew. And what's the point of being together if you're not the happiest?
We'll come back to that later. By painting parents as the source of gendered behaviors performed but actively detested by their offspring, then depicting these gendered behaviors as central to the disintegration of marriage, Fincher reflects cultural perceptions of marriage, or at least boomer conceptions of marriage, as inherently difficult, miserable, and doomed. Amy's diary entry,
Everyone told us and told us and told us marriage is hard work and compromise and more work.
reflects this social conception. Gone Girl seems to argue that the key to marriage is for both people to hide their true nature behind fantasy versions of themselves,
We were happy pretending to be other people.
because the reality of their gendered flaws will always result in misery.
But Nick got lazy. He became someone I did not agree to marry.
But while this interpretation is depressing, it's also easy. If these problems are inherent, there's nothing we can do to change them. That should be a hint, because neither David Fincher nor Gillian Flynn are in the habit of creating easy stories. The importance of fantasy in Gone Girl is why we can't accept this interpretation as complete. The lighting and music Fincher uses for Amy's diary flashbacks evoke fantasy, with the light score, the angelic halo on Amy, and the dark shadow over Nick's face. Even the story Amy cooks up for the police is meant to appear as a fantasy, and the film's meta-commentary draws attention to it.
Well, we have our first clue. In her own words, this man may kill me.
It's kind of a convenient endnote.
No, Nick. She is telling the perfect story.
Story here is important. Amy doesn't just try to get Nick arrested, she tries to broadcast the best story she can. If her relationship has to end, it wasn't going to be for banal reasons like money problems or cheating.
I thought writers hated cliches.
It was going to be a media event. She even describes how hard it is to fake a pregnancy.
You know what's hard? Faking a pregnancy.
which played no part in getting Nick arrested, but did turn the public against him. This is just one example of how Amy weaponizes various feminine and masculine archetypes in crafting her made-for-TV narrative. Her investment in the media coverage of her fantasy is made clear as Fincher shows her following the story closely while she hides out. When Amy loses control of the narrative, it starts to become clear that she isn't authoring a fantasy in an otherwise realistic world, but that Gone Girl itself takes place in a fantasy universe. After she's robbed, she calls her ridiculously rich high school boyfriend Desi. Desi takes her to his absurd lake house and tells her,
"There are cameras everywhere. The exterior, all along the grounds, the entryway. Anyone who is caught coming or going will be recorded. And I am not letting you get away again."
Being swept away by a creepy, wealthy man and locked away in a secluded mansion intentionally evokes gothic female imprisonment narratives. As Desi keeps Amy there, he regulates her diet, exercise, and clothing.
Decent clothes. Hair dye, makeup, tweezers. There's a gym overlooking the lake. The sooner you look like yourself, the sooner you'll feel like yourself.
So after a few weeks, she looks exactly as he wants her to. He forges the woman of his dreams from Amy, just like Amy forged the man of her dreams from Nick. It's only when Nick comes to understand his archetypical mold that he's able to win Amy back. Unfortunately for Amy, this only happens after she's trapped at Desi's lake house. To get her attention, Nick agrees to a high-profile interview. As he rehearses with Tanner and Go, he remarks that he should act how men are supposed to so Amy will come back. In this case, he plans to play the bumbling, apologetic husband. Nick's ploy works explicitly because he plays into gender expectations and fulfills her desire to live her life as a fantasy. Following her return, she says,
The Nick I saw on TV, that's the Nick I fell in love with.
And doesn't care when he insists he was only telling her what she wanted to hear. For her, the fantasy is enough. The issue here is Nick is not the bumbling apologetic husband, as he reveals when Amy returns and he admits to playing the role, nor is he the angry abuser or the killer Amy casts him as. For her part, Amy is not the expectant mother, the damsel, or the victim. By forcing the characters to act out these archetypes, as Nick does in his interview and Amy does when she makes her fake pregnancy real at the end of the film, Gone Girl not only suggests media uphold gender stereotypes, but that they provide crucial input that shapes social and cultural constructs and performances of gender. These characters only become gender archetypes because of media coverage. As a piece of media, then, Gone Girl implicates itself as a constructor of our social understanding of gender and, by extension, heterosexual marriage. Fincher and Flynn comment on this throughout the film in several ways. They evoke classic narratives that play a part in constructing conceptions of gender and marriage through Desi's gothic female imprisonment narrative and Amy's classic manipulative evil woman who traps a bubbling man in her web story. Then, when Amy returns, she visits the hospital and tells her story to a group of FBI agents and Detective Boney, while Nick waits outside with another officer. Both Nick and Boney poke obvious holes in Amy's story, holes law enforcement dismiss without thought. Tanner, master of media narrative, even remarks that Nick and Amy's story should be made into a Lifetime movie. This reference to the most widely mocked example of archetypical gender narratives, combined with the attention called to Gone Girl's own implausibility, all point to how Gone Girl is itself a fantasy film that constructs false but accepted notions of gender and marriage in a heightened reality unlike our own. Like the media it criticizes, or maybe satirizes is a better word, Gone Girl depicts gender and marriage stereotypes as if they are unavoidable realities, when the only reason these stereotypes play out is because their presence across cultural narratives convinces audience that these fictions are reality. The result of this interpretation inverts the entire meaning of the film. Apparently, Gone Girl's message is that marriages are doomed to play out as miniature battles of imposition, both sides fighting to make their fantasies real or otherwise dropping the act and allowing the relationship to crumble thanks to gendered behaviors passed on from their parents that manifest in children's relationships like an incurable genetic disease. But if Gone Girl acknowledges itself as a fantasy tale rather than a direct reflection of humanity, then another interpretation takes shape. The situations described before do play out here in our world, not because they are fated or inherent to modern American marriage, but because we believe the fantasy that they are fated and inherent, a fantasy propagated by media like Gone Girl. In this interpretation, we are not bound to fall into this cycle of relationship misery, rather we're caught up in a self-fulfilling prophecy, and if we stop believing in the fantasy, it will stop manifesting in reality. The aspects of gender relations and marriage that Gone Girl seems to hate only exist because films like Gone Girl exist. Therefore, Gone Girl doesn't hate relationships, marriage, or society. It hates itself. Near the end of the film, Nick answers those primal questions when he says,
"All we did was resent each other and try to control each other and cause each other pain."
That's marriage.
But that's only marriage in Gone Girl, in our mediated, fantastical view of coupledom. To find a happier conception of modern relationships, Gone Girl doesn't ask us to imagine a new idea of marriage. It asks us to stop imagining altogether.